Good morning and welcome. Today I have brought out the Desert Box once again. So let's listen to today's story. This is the Desert Box. So many important things happened to God's people in the desert that we had to have a piece of it right here in our classroom. The desert is a wild and dangerous place. When the wind blows, it changes the shape of the sand, and people can get lost. During the day, the sun beats down and it's so hot. But at night, it's very cold, and people have to wear many layers of clothes to stay warm. People don't go out into the desert unless they have to. It's a very dangerous place. The people of God were living together in the desert, but there was no water, and their crops didn't grow. And without crops, there was no grain to make bread. So the people of God had to leave and find a new place to live. That meant they had to go out into the desert. And so they traveled across the desert. They brought women and children, the young and the old. They all had to go out into that dangerous place. They were heading to a land called Egypt. Now, Egypt was ruled by somebody, but they didn't call him a king. They called him Pharaoh. Now, when the people of God arrived in Egypt, Pharaoh told them what they must do, what work they must do, what they would eat, when they would get up in the morning, when they would go to bed at night. They were trapped. The people of God had become slaves. Now Moses went to Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go." And Pharaoh said, "No." And many times Moses would come to Pharaoh and say, "Let my people go." And Pharaoh would say, "No." Then many strange things began to happen. And Moses would say, "Let my people go." And Pharaoh would say, "No." Then something very terrible happened. The oldest son of all the families in Egypt died. The people of God, the oldest son in their families, did not die. The people of God had put lamb's blood on their door frames, and the angel of death passed by them. Now Moses came to Pharaoh one more time and said, "Let my people go." And Pharaoh said, "Yes." So quickly, the people of God packed and they made bread for the journey, but they didn't have time to wait for the bread to rise. And this bread was called matzah. They were in a hurry because they were afraid that Pharaoh would change his mind. And sure enough, as they were leaving, they could hear a thundering sound. And it was the sound of Pharaoh and his army coming on horseback. So they were hurrying. And Moses came close to God. And God came close to Moses. And Moses knew what he had to do. And the water parted. And the group went through quickly, helping the children. I think these two are hurrying together, making sure everybody made it through. And then Moses came, and the water closed up behind him, and the people were free. And Miriam led the joyful dancing. Now, I wonder, what part of this story did you like best? What part of this story was the most important? What part of this story was about you, or do you feel like you were there? And I wonder, what part of this story could we leave out and still have the whole story? Thank you for joining me today, my friends, and bless you all.